Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Reverend Donna Seraphina. I am a spiritualist reverend and a psychic medium. I will be covering this case of the 4 students up in Idaho who were murdered, allegedly by Bryan Kohberger, and I will be covering his impending trial as well. Now, in America, there's kind of a basic format for court dates. Each state will vary slightly. The first court date Bryan had was an extradition hearing, and he waived his right to extradition, so that moved right along, and he was brought back to Idaho. The second court date is called arraignment. That means basically, do you plead guilty or not guilty? And if the person says not guilty, which they always will, unless they're real stubborn and stupid, they plead not guilty. That's a formality. And then they set one of many status conferences. Okay, status conferences are basically where all sides get together and say, okay, where are we at in this? Do we have any complaints? You know, if the defense feels anything's wrong, or et cetera, et cetera. So today's status conference was to see if Bryan wants to waive his right to a speedy trial. So in America, he has a right to be tried, I think within 45 days. I'm not quite sure about that, but it's real quick. He has a right to a preliminary hearing within 14 days. So what's a preliminary hearing? Well, a preliminary hearing is simply where the state puts on like a miniature trial, and all they have to do is show the judge that there's enough evidence here to put him to trial and let a jury decide if he's guilty or not guilty. It's a very low bar. So in the preliminary hearings, we will get a glimpse of the state's case. Usually the defense doesn't put on much of a case in a preliminary hearing, and the purpose for that is they don't need to. It's essentially all about, does the state have enough evidence to go to trial? Okay, so today was a status conference to see if a couple things. One, does Bryan waive his right to a speedy trial? The answer is yes. He waived his right to a speedy trial, so now they can drag this on for years. Okay. The second thing was, when are we going to do the preliminary hearing, which he, before he waives his right, had a right to have within a couple weeks. So now, since he waived that right, they're going to do it on June 26th. The defense has asked for 5 days set aside for this. So mark your calendars, but put it in pencil. And the reason I'm telling you to put it in pencil is because they tend to change these dates all the time. So at any time in the next few months, one side or another could call for a status conference or a conference with the judge, and then they can move the court date. So if you're following like other court cases, you've seen this happen where it goes on and on and on. But as of today, we have Bryan's next court date set for towards the end of June, right? And that will be the preliminary hearing. And then we'll get a glimpse of some of the evidence that the state is going to present against Bryan Kohberger. All right, so here's the court hearing.
All right, good morning. We are on the record. This is cause number CR 29222805. This is State of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Mr. Kohberger is in custody. He is appearing here in court with his attorneys, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings appearing on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for the preliminary hearing status conference. So I am going to inquire of counsel. Ms. Taylor, what's the status at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor. We are going to ask the court to set preliminary hearing out into June. We would request the 3rd or 4th week of June and probably 4 or 5 days for preliminary hearing. Mr. Kohberger understands his right to a timely preliminary hearing, and he's willing to waive the timeliness to allow us time to obtain discovery in this case and be prepared.
And Mr. Thompson, are you in agreement with that?
The state has no objection to that, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor reached out to us by email yesterday with her proposal. On reflection, the state's calendar would be better in the month of July but we will make the end of June work if that's the court's preference. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Taylor about that. I'm sorry, I know that's last minute.
That's okay. The court's calendar is going to be better towards the end of June, early July. So would that work, Ms. Taylor, for your scheduling on your other matters?
Your Honor, yes, if we take that fourth week in June, that's actually best.
Okay. So, Mr. Kohberger, I need to speak to you for a moment then. Sir, you do understand, and Ms. Taylor has represented here, that she's advised you of your right to have, or fully discussed with you, the right that you have, which is to have your preliminary hearing within 14 days of the date that you initially appeared before this court. As you recall, when I advised you of your rights, that hearing is a probable cause hearing where the state has to establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. If you waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing, it does not mean that you're giving up your right to have a preliminary hearing. It simply means that you would not be able to come back and challenge that the state did not present probable cause within 14 days. Do you understand?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with Ms. Taylor about your decision to waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
Do you need any additional time to do so?
No.
Then I will ask at this time, as to the 5 counts, felony counts that were charged in the criminal complaint that was filed on December 29th of 2022, are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing and agreeing that that hearing can be held outside the 14-day period?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor, do you concur with his waiver?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
I will find your waiver of speedy preliminary hearing is knowing, intelligently, voluntarily entered here in open court with the assistance of counsel. We will go ahead and set the matter for a preliminary hearing. Beginning Monday, June 26th at 9:00 a.m. And I will go ahead and reserve the week, so June 26th to June 30th, in the event that we need all 5 days for presentation of evidence. And just so council knows, it will begin at 9 a.m. each of those days. Is there anything further to address at this time in the case, Mr. Thompson?
Not from the state's perspective, Your Honor, no.
All right. Or Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kohberger, then you will be remanded into custody on your same no bail at this point in time, pending further proceedings. Again, we'll send notice out to council, and we will be in recess for this morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. If you like what you see, please make sure you've hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. What do you think about all those scrapes on Bryan's face? Okay, obviously he did it shaving for court. Was it anxiety or did he just want to taste blood? You let me know. What do you think in the comments below? And what do you think Bryan's thinking? Do you think he has remorse? He didn't have remorse at the scene of the crime. I can tell you that with 100% certainty, as far as when the spirit guides had me linked with his brain. So I hope you stay tuned to my channel. I have more projects coming up soon. In fact, either tomorrow or the next day, there will be another upload for you. All right, so make sure you're subscribed. Talk to you soon. This is Reverend Donna Seraphina signing out. All right, bye-bye.